Alright, coming in at number 10 we have the glass jar. As we know, the Americans, with the support from the Allies, dropped the horrifying atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The attacks killed over 200,000 people horribly, and the cities were absolutely decimated. Imagine how fragile human flesh is when it comes to heat, and then imagine how hot something would need to be to melt glass. Hot, right? Have a look at this glass jar found in the Hiroshima aftermath. It seems that heat of approximately 1,500 degrees centigrade, 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit, is required to produce this level of deformity. Scientific examination showed that a virtually instantaneous heat wave struck this object and passed as quickly as it had arrived. Basically, the jar resumed its solidified form without leaving stress marks. The flash heat incinerated many people on the spot too, which is absolutely horrible, and this jar just goes to show how hot it really was. Always my thoughts going out to the cities of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, many years later.
In our 9th spot today we have the knockoffs. Sometimes brand name pieces can be expensive and we want the same or similar item but cheaper. That's where knockoff brands come into play. Take a look at these cereals. They're so similar, yet so different. So we got Cocoa Rice instead of Cocoa Puffs, we got Honey Nut Crispy Oats instead of Honey Nut Cheerios, Fruit Rounds instead of Fruit Loops, Marshmallows and Stars instead of Lucky Charms, Cookies instead of Cookie Crisp, and lastly, Kids Crunch instead of Captain Crunch. Now if I saw an aisle filled with those, I'd think I was transported to another universe.
Coming into number 8 we have the World War II wheelchair. This wheelchair is haunted by the ghosts of hundreds of wounded soldiers. Why? Well, the chair was the property of a military hospital during World War II, and it is thought that it contains the spirits of those who sat in it. Sure. Chair owner Neil Packer said that when he sat in the chair, he felt as if his leg had been amputated. Weird. He said that another man's leg went blue after a brief stint in the chair. Another sitter said that she felt like her chest was heavy as if she'd had an infection. The chair was actually taken onto British television too. It featured on This Morning with hosts Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby, and Phil decided to sit in it. Honestly, I feel like if I've learned anything across my 4 years of working on Most Amazing Top 10, it's that you should never sit in the haunted chair. Does anyone remember the Busby stoop chair now chained to the ceiling in Yorkshire? Like, seriously, don't sit in the haunted chairs. But unfortunately, Phil couldn't have listened to me because I made this video after he sat in it, and I don't think he watches the channel, but maybe he should. Nonetheless, he sat in the chair on live TV and this was his reaction.
The chair?
Yeah.
How
do you feel?
I feel like...
No, don't be ridiculous. Don't be annoying.
Just joking, this is actually what he said after making that face.
perfectly normal.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
No twinges in your leg?
I have no twinges. I have absolutely nothing going on here whatsoever.
Coming into number 7, we have the pigeon foot. That's not a pigeon sound. Do pigeons make sounds? I don't know. You'll actually find a lot of severed pigeon feet in war museums across the world. Why? Because birds played a very big part in the war. Pigeons were used to send secret messages, but as you can imagine, that brought about a whole new layer of chaos that came from trying to intercept them and stop enemies finding them. One pigeon that failed in its delivery mission was discovered in 2012 in an English chimney in Surrey. David Martin was cleaning his block's chimney and found that one dead bird had a red capsule on its leg. He opened it up and discovered a secret World War II era message written in code. Eventually the code was cracked and the message was discovered to say, "Hit Jerry's right or reserve battery here. Already know electrical engineers headquarters, troops, panzers, batteries, engineers here." Of course, Jerry, I have to say, was the nickname for the Germans, for those of you watching that didn't know. So, vital intel that was never delivered on account of dead pigeon in chimney. Coming into number 6, we have the Trench Raiding Club. War is savage, and that's pretty evident in the existence of this raiding club. Many old weapons were found after the war, and often these clubs were found. Now they're usually made from wood wrapped in sharp pieces of metal, which to me sounds very medieval. Clubs and flails have been used since times of early warfare. While trench clubs were largely used in World War I, some were still found after World War II, and honestly I can't believe in the 20th century we were still whacking each other with spikes on sticks. Although, thinking about that, I maybe would prefer meeting those than some of the other World War II weapons. Although, actually, maybe the sticks. No, the stick. Brutal. It's brutal. It's all brutal. It's all got very morbid too. Imagining being hit with a big stick. Coming Coming into number 5, we have the trumpets that started the war. These scary wartime objects were actually from an ancient period in history. In 1922, King Tutankhamun's tomb was opened. Now this was a period between the First and Second War. A lot of people were very nervous about the whole thing, and perhaps for good reason, as this is where the legends of the Curse of the Pharaoh began. Among the artifacts, silver, wooden and bronze trumpets were found. Now the trumpets were played and recorded in 1939 on British radio, the BBC. A few months after it was broadcasted, World War II broke out and the announcement was delivered to the British public on the same radio station. This has led many to believe that the trumpets are cursed and actually have the power to summon war. This is one of the only instances where I would ever be like, do not play the trumpets. Usually I wholeheartedly encourage trumpet playing. I love trumpets, they're great, but war trumpets are bad. Yes, they are. Coming into number 4, we have the lost bombs, and the found bombs, but mostly the lost bombs are the concern. So a lot of worrying undetonated bombs have been found since World War II. Just last year, 1,000 people were evacuated from their homes in Cologne in Germany when a World War II bomb was discovered near a petrol station in the city, which doesn't sound like a great combination. That wasn't even the worst of it. In 2011, 45,000 people were forced to evacuate their homes when a drought revealed a big unexploded bomb in the Rhine near Koblenz. The scary fact is that thousands of unexploded bombs are still sitting hidden and buried across Europe. Do you want to hear a scary statistic? 70 years later, more than 2,000 tons of unexploded munitions are uncovered on German soil every year. Terrifying. Sadly, coming into number 3, we have the body parts. It wasn't just the Nazis mutating their enemies, a lot of countries were at it. It seems that actually a vast amount of Americans who took part in World War II and were stationed in the Pacific would wear Japanese body parts as trophies, which is disgusting. Luckily, the majority of these have been destroyed, but necklaces made of Japanese teeth were fashioned. Ears were pinned to military belts, and it is even said that Franklin Roosevelt, the President of the United States, was given the gift of a letter opener made out of a Japanese soldier's arm. A bunch of trophy skulls were found after the war. Skulls of dead Japanese people were given to Americans as gifts. Here's a picture of a woman that appeared in a magazine in 1944 that shows her writing to her sweetheart to thank him for the skull. Honestly, I can think of more romantic gifts, but like, whatever. Actually, not whatever. Judging you. Skulls. Gross. Stick to flowers, please. Coming into number 2, I do love a ghost ship. We have the Queen Mary. So the Queen Mary is more than just a haunted object. It's a haunted object filled with hundreds of other haunted objects and floating. When World War II began, British ship the Queen Mary was converted into a transportation ship for Allied troops. She transported 800,000 troops to Europe in her time. Unfortunately though, she was involved in an accident which killed 239 people. The Queen Mary was retired in 1967 after another stint as an ocean liner. She is now a permanently docked hotel in Long Beach, California, but it is said that she is mercilessly haunted by a number of souls. It seems the swimming pool is haunted by the spirit of a young girl. A first-class passenger, dubbed the Woman in White, glides across the floor of the Queen's salon in a long dancing gown. The ship has had to retire the use of room B340 because there have been so many complaints of its haunting. Those who have been on the ship tend to report ghostly goings on, and they have done for decades. Ever since the ship was a working transport ship, people have been spotting ghosts. Scary, but I do love a ghost boat. I don't love this at number 1 though. This is absolutely horrifying. I only learnt about this today. I am talking about the blood flag. The blood flag, or the Blutfahne, was a Nazi swastika flag that was regularly carried during the Third Reich, and it served as a ceremony piece for the party. The flag was the original carried in Hitler's failed Munich beer hall putsch in November 1923. It was soaked in the blood of an SA member who was killed in the attack. The flag was then saved and had the names of 16 people who died in the putsch sewn in. The flag was kept at Nazi HQ in Munich, but was taken out for ceremonies in which other flags were bought to touch it in order to consecrate them. It is said that the blood flag touched all of the banners in the Nuremberg rallies. The blood flag, interestingly, hasn't been seen since the end of the war. Nobody knows where it went. Creepy. So guys, that was the top 10 scary World War II objects for you. Before I read comments, I want to introduce you to one more object that I couldn't find a way to fit into my list. Meet this chap. It's Rupert. He's a lost Rupert. He's Rupert to me anyway. British troops called him Rupert and the Americans called him Oscar. This is an Allied used dummy. They would use paratrooper dummies to cause confusion and chaos amongst German troops, so they would drop these Ruperts or Oscars onto land and then Germans would be like, go get them, but no. Just a dummy.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have space energy. While a team of astronomers was working to map out the universe, which, for a second, imagine that's your job. What a task. Anyway, while they were doing this, they found a very mysterious object that is sending out bursts of energy every 20 minutes. This object is somewhere around 4,000 light years away, but despite this distance, it was sending out energy bursts that were so big that it was one of the largest radio sources in the entire sky. That's no easy feat. These energy bursts were occurring in a cycle where one would happen for 1 minute every 20 minutes before it would disappear for a few hours, and then this whole thing would repeat over again. There is nothing that we know of in this universe right now that would behave like this, so at the moment, while there are of course many hypotheses and theories, this is a mystery waiting to be uncovered. In our number 9 spot today, we have 2022 AE1. Just a few months ago in January, as the year began, scientists were watching an asteroid dubbed 2022 AE1 that became the riskiest one observed in over a decade. The initial observations of this asteroid placed it impacting with Earth on roughly July 4th, 2023, which would mean that there would not be enough time to deflect it, and this asteroid was large enough to do some real damage should it strike an area. Yeah, it was most definitely a cause for concern. There was a week where the moon outshone this asteroid, and so experts weren't able to see it and continued tracking its path, but once the moon was out of this phase, the risk seemed to have diminished. As of now, this asteroid has been taken off of the risk list, but who knows? It seems as though things can change quite quickly and unexpectedly outside the cozy home and protection of our atmosphere. In our number 8 spot today, we have a meteorite. On February 28, 2021, reports came pouring in from across the UK of an unusual streak of light that was seen in the sky. These reports were far behind the UK's Fireball Alliance though, as their cameras had already picked up the signal and they were already in the midst of estimating its landing site. That's right, this streak of light was a meteor, if the title didn't give it away. It's a remnant of our early solar system that has been flying through space at unbelievable speeds until it came down through our atmosphere and ended its long, awesome journey scattered in a bunch of pieces across rural Gloucestershire. Teams were sent out to be responsible for the recovery of the extraterrestrial material, which was found in a family's driveway as well as in a sheep's field nearby. This meteorite is a rare specimen known as primitive carbonaceous chondrite, which is said to contain materials that have been essentially unaltered since the formation of the solar system 4.5 billion years ago. The pieces of this meteorite can give us insights into the building blocks of the planets, and it can potentially give us clues as to how the Earth came to be this wonderful planet that possesses all of the resources necessary to sustain human life. In our number 7 spot today, we have King Tut's meteorite. So I actually learned about this one from Taylor, since he's the little history bee, and it is so interesting. Quite recently, researchers made quite the discovery that actually solved a mystery surrounding a dagger that once belonged to King Tut 3,400 years ago. An analysis of the king's weapon found that it was actually forged out of meteorite just outside of Egypt. That is so cool. This whole artifact and the way it was forged is one of the greatest mysteries in history. It is exceptionally unusual in the fact that it was made out of iron, which is a material that the Egyptians would not begin to smelt for another 500 years. This was just one of the many treasures that was found within his tomb, and one that continues to add to the incredible accomplishments of the ancient Egyptians. In our number 6 spot today, we have Tabbys Star. This star, which has also been referenced as the WTF star, is an F-type main sequence star which is located in the constellation Cygnus about 1,470 light years away from Earth. This star is of particular importance because of the fact that it shows unusual light shifts, which includes a 22% dimming in brightness. Basically, from our point of view, something continually blocks the star, and it likely isn't a planet because a Jupiter-sized planet would only block about 1% of the star the size of this one, so what could it possibly be? There are a few theories out there surrounding this anomaly, but none are able to fully explain what is happening here. Some believe that it is some sort of uneven ring of dust orbiting the star, and others believe that the star's luminosity fluctuates depending on the efficiency of the heat being transported to its photosphere. These are just two of the theories surrounding this star, but there are many more out there, and at this point we just don't know. Hopefully though, the James Webb Telescope, which was launched at the end of last year, will be able to get a more clear picture of what may be happening over there on Tabbys Star. In our number 5 spot today we have new material. Of course, when meteorites show up to Earth, people are dying to get their hands on them to study them and see what all they contain. We get some pretty incredible deliveries of things that arrive on meteorites, and analysis has been able to identify about 300 minerals in different space debris that comes down to Earth, and 40 of those are ones that have only been found in meteorites. This is all very cool and interesting, but one of the most fascinating is the Allende meteorite. This is one that exploded over Mexico in 1969, and after analyzing samples from it, in 2012 scientists announced the discovery of a material that had never been seen on Earth, and that frankly no one knew was even possible to make. It was called pangite, and it consists of quite a strange variety of elements, including titanium, zirconium, and scandium. In our number 4 spot today we have CFBD SIR 2149. Ah yes, the rogue planet with the easiest name to remember. This planet really had the scientific community on edge in 2012. This is because most of the planets we are familiar with orbit a star. I mean, look at the one we're most familiar with. We clearly and thankfully do. That's not the case for this guy though. CFBD SIR 2149 seems to just be drifting across space without any sort of star. This planet is also huge. It is thought to be 7 times more massive than Jupiter, and Jupiter is quite a bit more massive than Earth. This isn't necessarily anything that we need to worry about. I mean, we're at home in our solar system with our star, not wandering around the universe or galaxy, so that's good. I mean, let's just hope it stays that way. Astronomers believe that there are likely billions of rogue planets, and that they might even outweigh the amount of planets that have suns. In our number 3 spot today we have shooting stars. Okay, so we often look to the night sky in an attempt to see a shooting star, and the chances might be pretty good depending on how light polluted the area is. I mean, either that or you're seeing one of the Starlink satellites, but either way, we know that shooting stars aren't really stars at all, and are instead meteors burning up as they move quickly through Earth's atmosphere. But what if I told you that there really are some shooting stars that are actually stars? Hypervelocity stars were discovered by astronomers in 2005, and it is thought that they occur, or form, when a binary star system, or a star system that has 2 stars, gets destroyed by a black hole. One of the stars in the system will usually fall into the black hole, which just may send the other one flying across through space as fast as millions of miles per hour. It's definitely not the same thing that we think of when we think of shooting stars, but it is quite the galactic event. In our number 2 spot today we have quasars. If you aren't exactly familiar with them, they are super compact objects that kind of have a star-like appearance as they are very luminous, and it is thought that these guys are powered by supermassive black holes. So there's obviously quite a few interesting things about these, but one of the most interesting is in relation to one in particular called APM 082795255. This one contains a black hole that is surrounded by a vapor cloud, and within the cloud is 140 trillion times the amount of water on the Earth. It's the largest water reservoir ever discovered. That's insane. Researchers believe that this giant watery cloud formed long ago, just 1.6 billion years after the universe itself. In our number 1 spot today we have Stardust. Just a few years ago, researchers in Australia made a startling discovery. Ancient grains that were discovered inside of a meteorite that had landed inside of the country were studied, and it was revealed that they were actually grains of stardust. This dust was formed somewhere from 5 to 7 billion years ago, and it is now the oldest solid material ever found on Earth. These kinds of pre-solar grains are a very rare find. In fact, they're so rare that they're only found in about 5% of meteorites that have fallen to Earth. This is a fascinating discovery because having something like this really is the next best thing aside from having the actual star itself, and it gives insight into our universe billions and billions of years ago. Starting off this countdown, we have the deck of cards. Now, I don't know about you, but a normal deck of cards don't have number 1 cards. In replace, they have aces. But would you look at that? This odd deck had 1s, which makes me very uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but I've never seen this before. If we're playing Go Fish and you whip out a 1, I'm leaving, I'm sorry. Jokes aside, we have decks with aces because they can serve as the highest card or lowest. So it can serve as a 1 or more than 1. That's why we don't have 1s, according to Google, don't quote me. So I don't know where this person got their cards from, but it just seems wrong.
Coming into number 9, we have the Pilot. This portrait of a World War II pilot in its original 1940s frame was listed on eBay. The listing reads, "This haunted picture holds the energy of an old pilot's ghost." When the haunted picture is set out on display, many people have witnessed a man dressed in uniform appear in hallways and doorways of the house. A deep man's voice can be heard at late hours of the night. I can usually hear military jargon being shouted at fast speed. I don't know why this energy is so attached to this haunted picture, or what this ghost is trying to tell me. Weird. The listing also claimed that only those with the quote-unquote gift would be able to feel the presence. Rightio then.
In our 8th spot today we have the map. Now let's get to a serious one. In 1929, a group of historians discovered something pretty strange. It was a map from 1513 written on the skin of a gazelle. It was created by a well-known admiral of the Turkish Navy. Well, what's odd is that the map included Europe and North Africa, the coast of Brazil, several islands, and even Antarctica, which was not discovered until 300 years later. Not only that, but it was said that Antarctica was not covered in ice. The last time that occurred was more than 6,000 years ago. So this whole thing just doesn't make any sense. How did this man map a continent that's been covered by ice for the last 6,000 years? Maybe he's from a parallel universe, or maybe the map is. In our 7th spot today we have the stop sign. Again, another item that just makes me uncomfortable. Someone decided to create a lowercase stop sign, and it looks like it's like stop, no, just stop. Like it's too gentle. As a wise movie once said, no, stick to the stuff you know. It's better by far to keep things as they are. Don't mess with the flow. Stick to the status quo. If you know what movie that's from, I automatically love you. But maybe this person was driving around in another universe. Who knows? In our 6th spot today we have the Muama artifact. Hopefully I pronounced that right, because in another video I didn't, so now I'm changing the pronunciation. Let me know if I get it right, just be gentle folks. In 2017, this object was found flying by in our solar system. Now it's quite weird. It looks like a space rock, but it's not a comet or asteroid. It's too small and oddly shaped to be an asteroid. This thing is long. In fact, this is now the most elongated known space object. Not only that, but astronomers were shocked by the condition of it. Astronomers thought that the first space rock to enter our solar system would be a ball of ice and rocks like a comet. But this isn't one. Now, not only is it not shaped like one, but there's usually a cloud of dust and gas surrounding comets, and this object just doesn't have that. But before scientists could study it too much, it left our solar system. All we know is that the strange object came from another solar system. Or maybe a different universe, and that's why it's so weird and unlike anything we've ever seen before. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Touchless McDonalds. Imagine this, okay? You're hungry, you're driving down a road, madly looking for places to stop and eat, and that's when you see it. Off in the distance, you see 2 golden arches, and you know exactly what awaits you. The one and only McDonald's. Except whatever universe this is in, McDonald's only has 1 arch. Like hello, it's not Nick Donald's, it's Mick. So stop, okay? Or maybe someone messed up with the designing this restaurant, I don't know. Also, since when does McDonald's sell just bags of ice? Like look at the sign, bag of ice, $1. I mean it's a steal nonetheless, but still, that's odd on its own as well. In our 4th spot today we have the Ulf Bear Sword. Now this is something scientists like to call an out-of-place object, and that's because the sword dates back from around 800 to 1000 AD, which is shocking since they didn't have technology to make such swords back then. Swords like this were made 800 years later during the Industrial Revolution. Not only that, but its carbon content is 3 times higher than other swords of its time. It also suggested that in order to make this sword, iron ore had to have been heated to at least 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Again, they didn't have that technology to do that back then. So many people are perplexed. Well, there are a bunch of theories. One is that it was dropped by a time traveler, or two, it might have come from a parallel universe. One that is far more advanced than ours. But let me know your theory in the comments below. In our third spot today, we have Lost and Found. A number of people on Reddit have shared stories in which they have lost something only for it to reappear in a place where it's impossible to. So let me explain. So one man said that he was with his cousin at Home Depot. Before they went in, the cousin grabbed his wallet, but he didn't have any pockets, so he asked the narrator if he could put his wallet inside his pocket so that he didn't have to carry it around. He agreed and he zipped it into his track pants. After shopping around at Home Depot for a bit, they went to check out, but his wallet wasn't in the track pants. So they retraced their steps thinking maybe it fell out, but nothing. So they decided just to go back to the car and return to the store later. When they got to the car, lo and behold, the wallet was on the dashboard. Which is wild because the cousin literally handed him the wallet and he zipped it into his pants. Now, one person believes that what happened was the universe glitched, and maybe in another reality, the man just left his wallet on the dashboard. Somehow, those universes merged, hence why the wallet was on the dash. Now, it's all confusing how this stuff works, but that's me explaining it the most basic way possible. In our second spot, we have the little dino looking figures. In 1944, thousands of little dino looking figures were dug up in Mexico. Only problem is that the pieces date back to 2500 BCE, a time when no dinosaurs were roaming around and people couldn't have possibly known about dinosaurs then. This is all according to scientists. So were there some other creatures that roamed the earth back then that we don't know of? Or is there a time traveling paleontologist out there? Imagine that, like Ross from Friends also being a time traveler. I love that. I don't know, or the object is from another universe. And in our number one spot today, we have the ring. Now this next individual has a similar story to the Home Depot boys. So for her, she was washing the dishes one day when she heard a clink in her sink. Her ring that she took off when she was doing the dishes had slipped and fell into the sink and down the drain. Now, it was just a cheap one, so she wasn't too concerned. It wasn't like her wedding ring. So she decided to just go on about her day. In the end, she forgot that the ring was even there. That was until a week later when she was putting on her shoes and felt something poking her toe. She emptied out her shoe and her ring clanked to the floor. So somehow, the ring went from being in her sink drain to in her shoe. Someone explain that to me. I don't know, maybe house elves are real.